Hello and welcome to the 51st episode of the Accountant Success Secrets podcast. I'm Mark Lee, mentor, speaker and debunker.
And I'm Philippa Haynes of Insight 101. Each week on the podcast, we showcase another accountant or bookkeeper who has been running their own practice for a good few years and who we think can inspire and encourage other accountants and bookkeepers in practice around the UK.
We asked them to share their stories, including the highs, the lows, and what they've learned along the way. Our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for you, our loyal listener. And if you'd like to share your story in a similar way, do please get in touch with either Philippa or me. We're now taking bookings for June.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? So today we are delighted to introduce our 42nd interviewee or guest, Ceri Jackson de Azevedo. There we are. The most glamorous sounding person in the world, I think. Amazing. Who set up Rebus Bookkeeping and Accountancy in 2017. Previously, she owned a different business, a restaurant, travelled extensively and describes herself as an all-round quiet maverick. Along with the 7 members of her team, Ceri provides clients with a full accountancy service, including budgeting and cash flow analysis, so that they are fully equipped to make informed decisions and increase their profitability. As I'm sure will become apparent, Ceri is always thinking outside of the box, and she may well be the first ADHD Certified Practitioner that we have interviewed on the podcast. So welcome, Ceri.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me here. That was a great introduction.
You're very welcome. It's great to have you here. But just before we start, a word about our sponsor, Pinnacle Global, trusted outsourcing partner with well over 120 clients across the UK and Ireland. Pinnacle's CEO, Mayank Pandya, is a chartered accountant based in London, and he has a passion to encourage innovation and excellence in the accounting profession. Pinnacle has offices in the UK and offshore delivery centres across India, employing over 250 high-quality staff. With a strong focus on quality assurance, Pinnacle has helped many UK accounting firms to scale their capacity and operations. To find out more, please visit www.pinnacleoss.co.uk. You'll also find the link online wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Yes. Also supporting the podcast is the Tax Advice Network. Their website enables accountants to choose specific specialist tax advisors for general tax support or for help across any of other 100 areas of tax. It's free to use. You just pay the tax advisor you choose after agreeing terms with them. Go take a look at their website called findataxadvisor.online. where you can also register to get their weekly tax tips, which are written especially for general practitioners.
Indeed.
Or practitioner accountants. There we are.
There we go. Now back to Ceri. As you know, we aim to keep the podcast to around 30 minutes, and we do that by focusing the discussion around a few key questions. And the first one is, how and why did you come to set up your own practice?
Big question there, isn't it?
It is a big question. So I, like most, many bookkeepers, I guess, I want to say fell into accountancy. So I actually have a master's degree in public health, and I worked in mental health very briefly before I moved to Brazil in 2008. Which is where I then ended up having a restaurant and running a restaurant for the best part of 8 or 9 years. And I absolutely loved being in business. I loved owning a business, and just kind of having a restaurant's a bit of a different business, I guess. You get quite an adrenaline rush from being in the restaurant. But I relocated back to the UK in 2015 with my family. I had a 2-year-old son at that point. And so being in the hospitality industry, although I loved it, really wasn't an option when I relocated back. So I worked in my dad's family business for a couple of years, and I took over the accounts and the administration of that. And it just kind of it just clicked, because as a business owner, I was the typical business owner with the plastic bag, went to the accountant each month and gave them the receipts and monitored how much we had in the bank account. Nobody had ever told me how to run a business. The accountancy world in Brazil is very archaic. Um, it's very different to what it is here. And then so when I started working my dad's business, my dad had owned his business for many years, and it suddenly clicked that if I had understood the finances when I'd run the business, how different my decision making would have been, and how easier it would have been. Um, and I actually really enjoyed it, and I could really see benefits of the accountancy function behind running a business. And I just really enjoyed it. And so I retrained, and I ended up setting up my own business straight from the beginning. I'd been for a couple of job interviews, and I just didn't quite fit. Not in accountancy though, in other industries before deciding to go into accountancy. So I retrained, and then I had my second son, and I set up my business while I was on maternity leave. I was very lucky that I was working for my dad and could set up the business while I was on maternity leave. I know a lot of people don't have that luxury when they're moving into practice. So I was really lucky with that. So that was in 2017, and I remember I showed up to just networking events all over Edinburgh, where I'm based, and I made a website and business cards and showed up and just started talking to people, and that's the rest is history. That's how it started.
That's a fantastic story. One of the things I have to ask you though is, looking back on the restaurant business, you said, if you'd understood more about bookkeeping and accountancy, you might have made different decisions. Was there anything specific that you can look back on now and think, yeah, that really would have helped me? 'Cause I'm totally fascinated.
I mean, I think in hindsight, Um, I was really lucky because the restaurant was really successful. Um, we left when the economic situation in Brazil took a bit of a downturn, and obviously I had my son then, and things. So there was various reasons we came back to the UK. But looking back, and obviously the things that I can help my clients with now in terms of pricing, in terms of cash flow, at the time it was I would I would know roughly how much money, how many customers we'd have on a Friday, Saturday night, the busiest 2 nights of the week, how much then we had to go and buy. I knew how much was in the bank. And so I kind of then knew if we'd, be able to afford to take on extra staff that weekend, or, that's all looking at the bank account rather than actually having, proper figures. I don't think I saw a P&L the entire time I was running that restaurant. I don't think the accountants ever gave us that. So really, I was running blind, and I think probably I guess I've got a good business head on me that I managed to make the right decisions, but they weren't properly informed decisions. They were very much based on, I guess, just having a hunch about things rather than actually having the financial figures to kind of go, yeah, look at that, right, okay, then we need to go and do this, and actually making a decision based on figures, which is obviously what we help our clients with. So yeah, just it was just running a business blind, and I'm sure having actually understanding how finances worked as well, because I'd had no prior training or knowledge of it, rather than just kind of learning on the job. I think things would have been very different. But
So since that point, I mean, obviously, retrospectively, you've learned a lot about, how you would have tackled the restaurant business differently, and what having a good bookkeeper and accountant does for you. I guess from setting up your business and the practice, what have you learned since? Because it's obviously quite a different level of expertise, isn't it? And I'm sure you're continuing to grow as a business owner. What have you learned since you started?
So I think because I set up the business in 2017, I was a relatively new practice owner when COVID hit. And obviously the landscape, those were a very strange couple of years in the accountancy industry because things were changing all the time. We do a lot of payroll as well, so that was a particular area that obviously with furlough and things were changing. So I suppose the one thing that I think is really important is that you're constantly learning and things are constantly changing. And there's always a new bit of software, there's always and I think it's about learning new things to help you work. I guess that phrase, work smarter, not harder. But there's a lot of things out there now to make our life and our clients' lives a lot easier so that we can actually give better value. And things are changing all the time. So I think it's really important in our industry to just constantly be learning and looking out for what's going on because it is quite and even just since 2017 things have changed so much in the accountancy industry, I feel, from when I started.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important observation there, Ceri, and you're absolutely right. And I've seen enormous changes over the last, let's not say quite how long it is, but there's a number of people who think that current changes, development of AI, upcoming changes, MTD, for example, are revolutionary, and in some ways they are. But the accounting profession and those who've been around a while have always adapted. But I think your point about being open to learning and change is very refreshing, because I think there are some accountants who've been around, let's just say between how long you have and how long I have, who are a bit more resistant to change because perhaps they've got comfortable with how things are. But I think if you keep your eyes open around you, then things are changing all the time and have done for years and will continue to do so. So well done on that. I think it's a really important learning that's worth sharing. How did you foster? Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think our clients have obviously had to adapt as well a lot over the last few years, and business in general is changing, and so we need to keep up. We need to keep up with that as well. So yeah, it's not just in our industry. It's across the board.
You're absolutely right, and I suppose that allows me to just expand Philippa's question. You started as a bookkeeping and accounting practice. Where did you get your clients from? You were going to networking events. Do you work only for end user clients? Do you work with other accountants? How have you fostered the relationships that you've needed to build the practice?
Yeah, so a mix really. I would say that there's definitely been a couple of key accountancy relationships that we've had over the years that we've had a lot of work from. I was also very lucky that one of the accountancy practices that we had a good relationship with, they outsourced their payroll, and the person who was doing all of their payroll decided to go into employment, and her new employer saw it as conflict of interest for her to keep the client. So she passed about 20 payroll clients to me. And so that was probably maybe a year into my business. So that set up the payroll side of the business. And so there's been a couple of key accountants and accountancy practices over the years that we've had those relationships with, and shared clients, if you like. And then there's been a lot of referrals from existing clients, a lot of referrals. And just recently, I would say since, COVID, the whole buy local, there's a lot of people that are coming through our website locally now. And probably because I have a nice shiny new website, thanks to Philippa as well. That's helping. But I've definitely noticed a a difference now in people wanting somebody local, even though we are completely online. I do often, I'll go and meet people from time to time, but we don't do anything on site as such. People want to, they're happy to support local business, which is nice.
I think you're right. They're happy to support local businesses, but also when if they're not recommended to somebody, when they search, to make the results of the search easier, they search locally. And as you say, it doesn't matter that you could have clients all over the country. Realistically, the people who are searching for an accountant, a bookkeeper, unless you have particular expertise in a specific sector, you're going to get more interest from people who are local, because that's what they search for. Yeah, I think that's a very good observation as well. And in terms of other things that you've learned, you were telling us that your team has been expanding. I think your website suggests 5 members of the team. And even though it's shiny and new, you're now up to 7, which is amazing. How have you gone about finding new members to join the team? And sort of related to that is, do you bring in the work and then look for people to staff it, or do you bring in staff and then look for more work for them? How do you balance that?
So the first person I took on was somebody who had just finished college, and I could take her on. I think I gave her about 20 hours a week. And I was just very lucky. Again, feel very lucky. That somebody, it was a Saturday night. I was working all hours, because I think the first couple of years I did literally just work all
You
hours.
do. Yeah.
And I remember it very vividly. It was a Saturday night, and I got a phone call, and it was like, "You'll never guess. I've just been speaking to so and so, and their wife's just done an HND in accountancy and is looking for a job." And I said, "Absolutely, I need to speak to them," because I was just that, kind of just, overwhelmed. So I took her on, which was great, and she was great. Unfortunately, her personal circumstances changed. She needed a full-time job. I couldn't offer her that, so she moved on. And it then hit me that the only person I had in my business, I was then losing. And I'd spent, time getting to know her, and, she'd gotten to know my clients. And it just felt like a very vulnerable situation to be in, to lose this one person that was the only person that, was in the business. So I then made the decision that I would grow the business, take on part-time people, but have several people rather than just one specific person. Because I'm a mum of 2 young boys, and so, I can't just drop everything if a member of staff goes on holiday or whatever. I just don't have that time for that. So I then took on a couple of different team members over the years, and because I was recruiting during COVID, I just decided I did have an office prior to COVID, and then I got rid of that, and I moved home, and then I just decided that I would just recruit wherever in the UK that the best person was. And I've done that ever since. And I have, there's myself and another 6 team members. I have an operations manager and 5 bookkeeper accountants. And they all work part-time. And it's all, obviously it fits in with the business, but it's really important to me as a mum of 2 boys that my team are working hours that fits in with their family life as well. And I
Excellent.
think that in terms of retention, that's worked quite well, because 2 of my longest team members have been with me for nearly 4 years. And, most of us have kids, and they'll work, hours during the school run, around the school run or whatever it is. It's just really important for me, because that's what I want as my kind of work-life balance, that my team have that as well. And so that's kind of been really key over the years for recruiting and for building the team.
Yeah,
Awesome.
That's amazing. I think we've sort of talked as we've gone along about kind of mistakes. You mentioned a couple of things, but are there any, since you've set up your practice, anything you think you look back on and think, shouldn't have done that, could have done it easier, better?
I would
Or
say
maybe
there's
not,
probably
maybe.
Oh no, definitely. Well, we've not got that much time left, so
Yeah.
yeah, no,
How long is the
definitely.
piece of string? Yeah.
I know. There's definitely been, I would say that the biggest issues I've had over the years have probably been caused by taking on a couple of specific clients that I maybe had a hunch when I, initially, that, for whatever reasons weren't probably a good fit or the right time, and I've said yes rather than saying no. And it's yeah, it's caused a lot of trouble, just because they weren't the right clients for me at that time. Possibly taking up too much of our resources internally, or I took on a client because they had a fantastic business and they were great, but they were on a software that we don't tend to use very much. That caused a lot of trouble for me as well. And so, but looking back, you kind of go, I knew that. I had that feeling. I just didn't listen to myself. um, so yeah, so I think it's definitely one of the biggest things that I'm trying to do now, because obviously when you start your business and you're trying to build your practice and you're trying to replace your employed salary, you're saying yes to everyone, and definitely now I'm in a much of a different place where I can make sure that we're the right fit for the client and they're the right fit for us. And I think that's
And that's thank you for your honesty there. It's not an unusual situation at all. A number of people say, I wish I'd trusted my gut. And I think what happens, it's the lack of confidence. So there's a naive lack of confidence when one starts. And then as you grow and you have the confidence of experience to know what's a good fit and what isn't, and the confidence to be able to say no to a prospect, and maybe to rehearse how you're going to pass them on or be kind and gentle, and even to part company at some point, and to recognize that you don't have to be experts in all the different software packages. Again, once you've got a decent practice, you can say, actually, we want all our clients to be using the same package or one of two packages, because it's not worth the time and effort being comfortable with the others as well. There's enough work and opportunities out there, particularly when you have a shiny new website supported by Philippa Haynes of Insight 101 that helped you get to it.
I was actually going to ask you, and not to blow my own trumpet, but
I just
really,
did it for you.
Thank you. But what triggered you to think about kind of your brand and redoing your website and everything? And I don't mean it's more about other people, recognizing maybe that they're in the same position. Was there anything specific that made you think about it?
I don't, two things. I don't think it was really representative of, because the first website I did, I made on Wix myself and it was fine. It was absolutely fine. It worked well for me. But it wasn't just me. There was, there was a team and a business, I wasn't just offering bookkeeping services. We were offering, the complete end-to-end range of services. And so I needed a website that reflected that, and also attracted the type of clients. So although I don't have a niche in terms of market, the type of clients that I want to attract, and the type of business owners that I really enjoy working with have a similar mindset to myself. So this whole thinking outside the box, which is great that Philippa has all that, and has pinned all that for me. And I feel that the website, you're only going to attract the clients, you're only going to attract that if that's what you're portraying. So I think that was really important, that at that point, because the business had changed and grown, and because I kind of understood a bit more about who I was trying to attract, I think that was important to get
And
that
tell us
done.
where this thinking out of the box came from, because obviously we only have half an hour, and so we can't sort of delve deep into your life like we have done before, but just so that people understand how it translates and also learns a bit more about you.
Yeah, so I think
And
you
include
might
the
be better at
ADHD
explaining
as
this
well
than
in
me,
there.
actually. But the thinking out of the box. Um, so, well, I guess on a personal level, I've always, I've always travelled. As you know, I left uni and went and worked in China for a couple of years and worked as a teacher there, and then came back and studied. And I've always kind of adapted to new environments, and went to Brazil and opened the restaurant, came back and found myself in accountancy. So I guess that's kind of constantly thinking out of the box, constantly adapting, constantly moving forward. But I feel that on an accountancy and a business level, and it's this whole kind of staying at the forefront, that you need to think outside the box, because things change, and we're constantly moving and changing. So thinking outside the box, then we're able to we're able to deal with those things. So one of the things we're doing as a practice, so again, on a personal level, I have a 12-year-old son currently going through CAMS for ADHD and autism. And so that that's that journey's been a big part of my personal life now for the last couple of years. And I've, made a lot of friends and colleagues in that kind of space now as well. And it was really interesting to just speaking to people and learning more about ADHD and other neurodivergencies, that the relationship with money and finances, and how that works. Um, the feeling of overwhelm, particularly around finances, um, and the sort of fear that kind of comes with getting something wrong. Um, and I thought, we have quite a large client base now. We have like more than 120 clients. And I thought, within that, the probability is we're going to have, a certain percentage of neurodivergent clients. But not only that, I feel that when you speak to clients, a lot of clients do have a fear of getting things wrong. A lot of clients, people fear what they don't understand. And that's neurotypical, neurodivergent. We all do that. And so I felt it was really important. There's also some other team members who have either children or themselves a neurodivergency. And so we felt as a team that we could implement certain strategies that would help all of our clients. And it's the way that we communicate. So you're not sending, a client a huge email with all of these points, and they look at it and just go, I'll deal with that later. It's dealing with deadlines. It's just all the kind of, there's lots of little things. And so as a practice, we've reached out to our clients, and actually it's been really nice, because we've had clients come back who have come and told us that they identify as being neurodivergent, and so I guess they feel understood and they feel comfortable now, that if they feel overwhelmed or confused by something, that they can get in touch, and it doesn't feel like they're asking us a silly question, that they're going to be understood and not judged. And so it's been really nice. It's been really well received, and we're at the beginning of this journey, but I feel that just the way we communicate with all of our clients in general is really important, so that they understand what we need from them to make our lives easier, and we can help them in the best that we can. So um, I guess thinking outside the box, that's probably a good example of what we're
Lovely.
trying
I
to
mean,
do.
I'm sort of picking up that you're a real people business, and everybody says that. But what I mean is you truly are. So you think about your team, you think about their personal circumstances, and if they've got children and what they need to fit in around their lives. And so everybody's very accommodating there, but equally you're now reaching out to clients and also prospects, and taking a sort of step back and going, what's going on in their life as well. So you're starting with that person first, and I don't actually think many people do that, even if they say they're people focused or whatever. I think that's just an easy thing to say, but it's not an easy thing to do. So I just think that's wonderful.
It is. I agree. And when we share our final thoughts before we just close the interview in a couple of minutes, something that you said there really reminded me of something from earlier in my career that may be worth sharing. And I think what you've done there is you've talked about what makes Rebus unique. You've talked about some of the secrets to your success, both historical and that are likely to flow from that change and development as well. So I'm super impressed and delighted that you agreed to come on the podcast today.
Yeah, and of course, Rebus means puzzle as well, doesn't it? Or he was a detective, but Rebus is actually a puzzle as well. So you've got to think outside the box. Oh, it's all connected. It's all connected. Well, it's been wonderful to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much. Sadly, we've run out of time for today, but please, can you share your contact details for those people who are listening in and thinking, we need to have a chat? That would be brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much to both of you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, good. So how can people find you? What's the best way of getting in touch?
So probably on LinkedIn, just under my name, which has almost every letter in the alphabet in it. So or send me a message through the website, which is www.rebus, which is REBUS bookkeeping.co.uk.
Awesome, thank you. And now, before we share our final thoughts from today's interview, Philippa, that's a new innovation that I should have warned you about, but you'll do it. How can listeners find out more about you and your business?
Yeah, I'm totally off guard today. This is not, and because we've been friends for 4 years, apparently I'm going to let you off. But so yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You can also find me on my website, insight101.co.uk. I really have very little to say about how I support bookkeepers and accountants because Ceri has said it all for me. It's about understanding who you are as a person, what your background is, and how you can insert that into your brand and your marketing, but essentially your business. And that's what it's all about. You need a particular sort of approach that's going to help you to stand out. So Mark, tell us a little bit more about your business, and I'm excited to hear more.
Because you've never heard it before. Online everywhere, I'm Bookmark Lee, and what I really love is supporting sole practitioner accountants who want things to be different, whether that's to reduce the stress of running a practice alone, attracting better clients, increasing profits, or just making things work on their terms. I recognise not everyone wants to grow, some just want better, and that's where I come in, helping accountants refine, reshape, and re-energise their firms without chasing growth for growth's sake. I'm always happy to have an initial conversation with no obligation, no strings, and no pushy sales techniques. Sometimes that's it. Other times it leads to accountants choosing to work with me one-to-one, or they decide to join the online Sole Practice Club. And next, we meet on the second Thursday morning of each month. And next week, the focus for our discussions will be making better use of AI and understanding AI prompts in your practice. In any event, I'd also encourage you to reach out and connect with both Philippa and me on LinkedIn. And also please follow the podcast pages on LinkedIn and on Facebook.
Yep. So just before we leave, we better share a final thought inspired by today's interview. Our thanks again to the sponsors of podcast, Pinnacle Global Group, your trusted outsourcing partner. Do check out their website and let their CEO, Mayank, know you heard about Pinnacle Global on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast.
And thanks to the Tax Advice Network, the easiest way for accountants to reach specialist tax advisors. Remember, there's no charge for using the website, findataxadvisor.online, where you can also access their weekly tax tips written especially for general practitioner accountants. So what's your final thought for today?
Philippa? This is the bit, isn't it? Well, I mean, for me, it's just the power of this sort of podcast, because I think the stories behind each individual and each business are really powerful and unique. And I think it gives a really lovely insight into how people run their business. And whilst there are issues and problems and mistakes that are similar, I think how you approach that is always very different. And I think hopefully people can pick up lots of tips as they go along the way. How about that, Mark? Thinking
Lovely.
off the top of my head. And what came across for you, Mark?
Well, I think Ceri's point about embracing the idea, the whole concept of ADHD, which is becoming much more well known, the concept of neurodiversity, and that we're all on the spectrum somewhere, but it's still unusual for an accounting bookkeeping practice to focus on that and to be talking about that. And I remember back when I joined BDO as a partner a long time ago, they were expert advisors to growing businesses. Now, it's a big surprise to people now to realize that that concept of talking about growing businesses was unique at the time. That wasn't a phrase anybody used. And it affected the way we spoke to our clients, because everybody wanted to grow. If you didn't want to grow, what was the point in engaging us? But it affected how we spoke to clients, and nobody else was doing it. So if you were a growing business, you wanted to be dealt with by BDO. Now, I'm going back a long time. Everything's evolved and lots of people talk about growing businesses now. But I think Ceri's going to have similar degree of success, not necessarily comparing you to BDO, but the concept of picking up on the zeitgeist and it being genuine, and reflecting how you operate, your clients, your style, your approach. I think that can only be good things for you and Rebus. So well done.
Great stuff.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Good thoughts. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please share the love online, subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or YouTube, or let us have your feedback directly. It all helps to broaden the reach of the podcast. And do please contact us if you'd like to be interviewed, or there is somebody you'd love to hear about and we'd get them on as a guest.
Lovely. Thank you, Philippa. Thank you again to our wonderful guest, Ceri. And until next time on the Accountant's Success Secrets podcast, or anywhere else we might meet online or in real life, bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.